Brendan Roberts was in AI before AI was AI. And I mean intelligence, not insemination. In 2022, the world changed. We got ChatGPT, but back in 2017, Brendan founded a little company called Aider. Aider was a voice-based analytics assistant for accountants.
It had voice capabilities for sure, but it was conversational and it was pointed at the small business owner, not the accountant. They don't necessarily want an accountant, but they need an accountant. They want this buffer between themselves and the IRD.
One of the facets that has an overweight impact on one's ability to succeed is those that you surround yourself with over the course of your journey. Brendan and I talk a lot about the high value attributable to relationships.
Building lots of relationships and laying the foundations of getting to know people and putting the hard work in. A lot of these kind of sales and sales cycles come from relationships and people that you know to get you in the door.
2020 was hell for all of us. But what if your business was highly exposed to the hospitality and retail sector? You'd just run out of money, and the term sheet that you had agreed to by your major investor just got pulled.
It was a really, really horrible year. Like, just how do we get April's payroll? How do we get May's payroll? What do? You put your house on the line, you loan the business money, you borrow from where we did everything that you could.
This is a show about perseverance, about product placement, about resilience, and about how to do it tough in a really, really difficult world and market and yet succeed at the other side. Stick around, enjoy the show. Brendan Roberts, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Josh. Nice to be here.
I was rapt to see in the LinkedIn release, I think that it was, that Aider had an exit. So you and I have known each other for probably about a dozen or so years, I think, around technology in Auckland. And so I was really pumped to see that happen. And I had a question for you, which I'm going to dig in later on of the episode, which was, are you the first AI exit from New Zealand? Now, that's a little teaser because we'll pick that bit of the conversation up later on. But famously, Aider was a voice-based analytics assistant for accountants, is kind of one of the things that you had in the world. Now, accountants are known for their sparkling personalities and their conversational ability. So from here, are you going to go and make like a joke writing assistant for tax lawyers or something? Or
that's a great use case, actually. Tax and fun. No, I'm not going to do that. No, from all right. Yeah. No, I got some work to do. We've got some things to hit, and I'll be focused on that for the next little while. Have a few ideas as to what I'll do next, but it won't be a joke around tax, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think I know a couple of tax lawyers, and tax is no joke.
No,
it's very, very serious.
It is.
So the tax department have been taking people through the liquidation process, which is, a horrendous kind of thing to do. But I always not joked, about the two groups of people that you don't want to owe money to is the tax department and organised crime.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think tax, just by the way, tax, it's funny how, we'll probably get into the backstory, but what Aider actually launched first was conversational. It had voice capabilities for sure, but it was conversational and it was pointed at the small business owner, not the accountant. The accountant was one of the deliberate steps to include. So the vision was small business and then accountant. And a lot of why we wanted to do that was because of tax, because every single small business owner they don't necessarily want an accountant, but they need an accountant. They want this buffer between themselves and the IRD or the ATO if you're in Australia or whatever it is,
Yes.
And it's this fear of tax. And that's why accountants are so prevalent and so important to a lot of small businesses. So we joke about tax, but absolutely it's not. Tax is not a strength of mine. It's not a part of the world that I know. I have an accountant. That's what their job is. But but it's definitely part of the small business owner's life.
Yeah.
And no joke.
No joke. Not to anyone.
Yeah.
So you've actually had two exits, and we're going to kind of weave our way through these things, and I'm going to come back to Aider because that was the stimulus for this conversation.
Yeah.
But before that, you started a company called Nine Spokes. And so talk us through the origin story of that business and how you went about founding it and then taking it through an IPO.
Okay. Yeah. So I was co-founder of that. There were two other guys, Mark and Adrian, that actually, like, they started, they got in, they had an idea when I when I first met with Mark and Adrian, they had the idea, but they hadn't really built anything and started anything yet. And so I kind of thought, well, this is a great way to get in from the ground up as a co-founder and start to build the business out. And there were literally just a couple of us in an office just around the corner here trying to work these things through. When was this? About 2012. And we started to build it out. It was a platform mainly for banks. And so the customer was a bank. It's an enterprise SaaS play. It integrated different data sets, and then the bank would take those different data sets and white label it to their bank branding and launch it out to their clients. And so the sales cycles are really long. Banks move very slowly, and you got a lot of security and compliance to get through. But once you're in, it's chunky money. It's pretty good revenue. It just takes a while. So it's one of those businesses was really interesting. It was born in New Zealand. We grew from here, but our first big bank customer was actually Barclays Bank in the UK. And so that was hard because...
How did you do that? Like a little New Zealand-based startup?
Yeah.
The Brits know, and my perception, having lived and worked there, is that they kind of love and look at New Zealand as being a little bit of a little brother thing. But how did you get that kind of sales, that process, and how did you win that big key marquee brand?
It took a couple of steps to get there. And there's a really interesting theme that I've just been pondering on over the last couple of years, but since the Aider exit and some of that story, and a lot of this theme may come back through throughout the chat today. But we didn't land Barclays because we went to Barclays first. We landed Barclays because we went to another bank first and built a relationship there. Got to know some people there, one of which had recently moved from that big Australian bank, into Barclays.
Okay.
And so we had a foot in the door, we had a way in, and started to build a relationship there. And eventually that person brought us in. So a lot of these kind of sales and sales cycles come from relationships and people that you know to get you in the door. And so that's ended up why Barclays was first, but they also hustled for a big old bank. The bank, I think that the bank might be wrong, but it's older than New Zealand. They've been doing their thing for a while, but they moved relatively quickly in bank talk. But then once you've got your first customer like that with a big brand, some of the others kind of jump on. And so we got banks like Royal Bank of Canada and a few others, OCBC, and so a few different places around the world that we got going. But the sales cycles are long, and we started to grow the team, and that requires capital. And so there was good capital raising here, and had some supportive local investors, but we needed bigger checks, and we were burning capital to land each one of these banks. And then the idea of an IPO came out, and we were discussing it. We were still early on as a business.
You were post-revenue, but it wasn't
post-revenue.
It wasn't big numbers, was it? You were
No.
$1 million kind of stage. Yeah,
something like that, probably just over that. And I'd actually been involved in an IPO in the UK when I worked there.
Oh.
So I worked in a different industry, but it was a very entrepreneurial business. When I joined, that was relatively small. By the time I left, it was really big. And this major journey of 10 years of just kind of building and building and building. And on that journey, we IPO'd on the London Stock Exchange. I didn't have to do that. I was kind of a layer down or two from a lot of that stuff, but I knew what it did to the business and what we had to do to the business to qualify and to remain compliant with all the regulations and all those kind of things, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with.
I'm just going to jump in there if I may.
Yeah.
Because I associate you by background as being a marketing guy with strong sales chops. And you're obviously a founder and a CEO, so you have to do a whole variety of different things.
Yeah.
And so we had Will Palmer on the show, who's the only other person that's gone through an IPO. Tony Falkenstein and I talked about what it's like to own and run majority shareholder of a listed company.
Yeah.
The IPO journey is an interesting one. And so what Will talked about, and I'm curious as to your thoughts, is that a lot of a successful IPO is about the narrative, the story that you tell about that business, its backstory, how we got to where we are today. And this is the opportunity for the future. So in marketing, did you get involved in the crafting of that storytelling for like investors and roadshows and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I was involved in the Nine Spokes days for sure. Yeah. And I think that's kind of where I was going there was the idea of IPOing came up and we're like, should we do this for Nine Spokes? And there was some good conversations and certainly the two other founders were really keen to do it and I was less keen to do it because of my previous experience. And I just felt it was a little bit too early for us.
Yeah.
And because we didn't really have that narrative and the narrative is a lot to analysts. So you're always trying to manage other people's stories of you. And so if you haven't nailed your own story, trying to manage other people's stories of you is a little dangerous. And if they go off and tell a different story, then, your share price can be all over the place. And then suddenly I felt that the business is trying to manage the share price instead of trying to manage the business. You're not focused on the pain points, focused on the customer. The share price is going crazy. So you're like, how do we fix that thing? And so I felt like I was worried that the share price would start to drive the business rather than the customer or the pain points.
Yeah.
We eventually decided to do it. And I mean, there's definitely pros and cons to it. We did raise some good capital through the IPO. We listed on the ASX, by the way, not New Zealand Stock Exchange.
Did you decide to do that? Was it just a deeper pool of capital that was available?
Mainly capital.
Yeah.
And I think, we listed pretty quickly. We got through the hurdles pretty quick. We listed, there was good capital available. The volume on the platform's way higher.
Yeah. Let's just pause. I want to pick up on those pros and cons, if I may.
Yeah.
And so I'll think about the pros if you think about the cons, and then add the pros on that I've missed along the way. So pros is obviously access to larger pools of capitals. So different types of investors, mums and dads, institutional investors, fund managers, so there's a whole lot of different types of people that could buy shares in your company. It obviously provides liquidity to founders and other shareholders, so you can buy and sell. So it's almost, provided there's some form of liquidity, like, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars traded a day, it's not a million miles away from cash because you can turn it from a thing into cash very quickly. Unlike property, for example, or even bullion gold, that might take 48 hours to turn around, but property could take you months to turn around into some form of liquidity or cash.
Yeah.
Then you've got those are the two main pros that spring to mind. I mean, I'm not sure if it's a good or a bad thing, but the robustness that you need to have to go through of running the business to meet the regulations of the regulators, you could consider that both a pro and a con, right? So what am I missing here? And please talk about the cons.
Well, just on the pros, the other pro for us was, remember, we were selling to these big banks. And as a startup from New Zealand, the banks would go, who the heck are you?
Validity.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of credibility about these guys have actually done the hard yards, have actually got themselves listed. There must be something in this business. There's there was a stamp of approval that you can't just list a business. You got to go through quite a lot. And that gave the bank some level of comfort, which was great. On the founder liquidity pro, we didn't actually have that for a while because we listed so early in our life that our founder shares were escrowed for 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So we couldn't sell.
Makes sense.
But that's just that what they don't want when you have an early listing business is some founders getting out.
I love my food bag. That's what happened with
Something
that.
like that.
With that share.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I think the cons are, that share price thing we spoke about, but also if you are early and you're still pivoting and changing things, the disclosure rules are really high. So you can't even talk about things internally with people that you would normally talk about unless you've, I think the word is cleansed, the market. You've made the external announcement. Everybody, all shareholders are find out about this first, then you can talk about it. Right. So again, if you put your hat on of an early stage business and you're trying to figure things out and you're like, actually, this one's not going to work. We want to do this one instead. That might be considered a major announcement. A change of product, a change of feature, a change of customer. In an early stage of business, you want to be able to pivot and bounce around and do the things that you need to do. But when you've got those regulations, you really have to be very careful about that. So you've got to then go through and formally announce everything to the shareholders and the market first, and then you can go and tell your sales team and your success team and everything else.
Yes.
So that slows you down a lot. And then there's all the compliance costs to staying on the market. So it's really good solution for capital and for access to capital and a bunch of other things. Really good for certain types of businesses, and especially if you're further down the road. But I just felt I had concerns going into it, that it was the right thing for us to do at the time.
How did the share price perform?
Well, it was very bouncy, up and down. On
like a big range, like 50% over
months, up and down a lot. And it's very hard to predict. And it moved around a lot. And because we were escrowed, we couldn't do anything about that anyway. So it was just kind of looking at the longer range, the long-term picture, and figure out where we're going to go and just make the business work.
Yeah.
Subsequently, I think Nine Spokes are still around, and as far as I know, doing a good job. I haven't been involved for a while. I left the business shortly after that, but subsequently they've actually delisted, which I think for them is a good thing. It's cheaper to run the business, and they can pivot and do whatever they need to do as a private business. They've still got big bank customers, so hopefully that's all going well. But haven't been involved in the business for quite a long time now.
Yeah,
but there was very interesting lessons learned going through that of, I guess, deeply understanding, for me particularly now, the accounting industry. It's the first time I got involved in the accounting tech world, because one of the things that Nine Spokes did was it integrated to Xero and to QuickBooks and to Sage and all these accounting apps, brought all that data in, and then integrated to a bunch of other apps that small businesses use, like maybe your e-commerce, like your Shopify or your Google Analytics and all these things, brought it all into one place. And then the bank would take that and give the small business owner a single pane of glass. So here's how your business is performing.
Yeah, like a dashboard, one-stop shop. It was a wonderful concept.
Yeah.
I'm going to pause on this because it's a point that a lot of people struggle to get their head around. I'm curious as to you being one of the co-founders of the business. So I presume that you had the sales and marketing hat on, and then you had like a product and an engineering kind of co-founder as well. Is that right?
So we did. We eventually brought someone in. They weren't actually a co-founder. There was, I think I'm relatively technical. I'm not a coder. I'm not a developer, but I understand product, and so I took on a lot of that until we brought in a CTO. But that was more afterwards. They weren't actually technically a co-founder.
Yeah.
And so, and Mark and I, out of Mark, Adrian and I, Adrian was involved in another business for a while. And so it was Mark and I as the two guys on it for a long time before we started to bring other people in.
Yeah. Okay.
By the time I left, there were about 125 people. So it ended up becoming a reasonable sized business with a lot of developers onshore, offshore, some good technical people, and we filled a lot of those gaps.
Yeah. I mean, it's a business of some substance, right? You're in a listed company, you're one of the founders of that listed company, and yet you decided to leave. So how did you make that decision?
Yeah, well, I think some of it was just culturally, things were changing, and I didn't feel like it was quite right. And I think you could see that in the way that the business was changing. There was also a lot more emphasis in the UK. I was, by that time, really exhausted, like trying to run a business that is in New Zealand and in the UK. It's just never downtime. I think 1 year I was in the UK 8 times. And
it's a flying economy.
Yeah. Exactly. And just kind of to and fro. And even when you are in New Zealand, you're working UK hours, but you're trying to kind of do your life as well. So a lot of that stuff was quite a burden. But then there was this other thing that when we were talking about 2016, 2017, where I could see some patterns in the work that we were doing in the accounting tech space. And I could see that a lot of accountants really wanted to be better advisors to their clients. There was a big movement in the industry. And there was just, no one was really doing it at scale. And most small businesses, even looking at what Nine Spokes had built and were offering their small business customers, when you show a lot of small business customers, here's what's going on in your business, it's quite confronting to them. They don't necessarily know what those numbers and charts and graphs mean or how it works. So I started to think about what's an easier way to digest numbers. What's an easier way to understand them, get the information, and basically just break it down into something that I can understand more. And that's when the idea of, conversational AI was, kind of, it just landed. There was a light bulb moment, and I was still in Nine Spokes, and I was like, looking at it going, are we going to do this? Is this the path this business is going down? And the answer was no, because even if we could, the banks were not ready for that stuff yet. And everything you execute and built had to go through the banks.
Mm.
I was like, okay, well, I feel like this is quite a big opportunity.
You felt the shift.
Yeah.
November 2017, Microsoft released the Microsoft Bot Framework, MBF, and I think Aider, like Ambit, was built on that as a kernel to kind of prove whether or not this thing could work. And so it just started to get frothy. It was kind of, we were just emerging from the AI winter. And so people think about the AI explosion as being 2022 when ChatGPT was launched, but it was actually back in kind of 2017,
right.
Around about that sort of time frame. So
yeah, well, Ambit and Aider were really early on that journey.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't know, we might have done some early prototype testing on Microsoft, but, we looked at a bunch of other frameworks to try and use. And this was obviously, at that point, I was like, I've got to do this. I kind of came out of Nine Spokes and I was sitting at home and I was whiteboarding a bunch of things. And I was like, this must be doable. This being able to build a conversational interface across your data using AI to understand the intent of the user. When you ask me a question, what do you mean by that? Going to get that intent and go and get the answer from the data and give it to the user in a really simple way, bite-sized chunks, conversational, rather than here's a spreadsheet or a dashboard of 1,000 things on it.
Yeah, what does it mean?
Yeah.
I'm just going to close out the Nine Spokes piece. So what I've heard you say is that, founder went on the journey, built a business of some substance, 120 odd staff, customers here, Australia, the UK, listed entity, etc. But you felt that the business was going culturally, your experience of working there wasn't what it was at the outset, and wasn't necessarily what you enjoyed, firstly. And secondly, and perhaps most importantly, there was the massive travel piece. So there was like the burden that was, expected of you to do your part in making sure the business succeeded. But then you saw this opportunity and you're like, oh, this is fascinating. We as a business, Nine Spokes as a business, that's not where we're able to go because of the business model that we've created and our relationship with the banks. And so you then went, okay, I kind of need to go and do this.
Yeah.
What was that conversation like with your co-founders?
It was tough, but I think at that time, we were all feeling the pressure and the burn, and I thought there was understanding and, they're both gentlemen. So it wasn't, there's never been any animosity. It was more of I think all those things laid on top of each other was understandable, but at the same time, there was big change at Nine Spokes and there was a lot of growing up that needed to be done, and we were hiring people that were coming in that were kind of really senior enterprise people to deal with the banks and all that kind of stuff, which, for me was not really where I wanted to play anyway. And from Nine Spokes, they probably didn't even need someone like me to come in and agitate the building and the growing of some of those things. When we had mature customers and product that we were shipping, and what we needed was layers of proper enterprise salespeople that would do a lot of that.
Yeah, like corporate executive type.
Correct. Yeah,
it's fascinating for me to consider the age and stage of a business and the many different facets of decisions you've got to get right to get. Let's talk about the people. That's where we're focused at the moment. Ensuring that the types of person that you're bringing in at that particular point is right for where you are now, 100%. But also the next 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to get right. I had Johnny Merkin, Nomos One founder, on the show just yesterday, in the last week or so before this, and he faced burnout. And life was chaotic and very, very hard, ended up in hospital. And so he and the board made the decision to hire a grown-up to come in and run the business. He would have been in his late 20s, early 30s at this stage. So they brought the partner from one of the big accountancy firms in, and age and stage, just completely the wrong thing for that business. They went about bringing systems processes in that were completely inappropriate for a 25, 30-person software company. And so where you were at in Nine Spokes, it sounds like you needed some of that, corporate kind of mentality about it. Yeah, that doesn't seem like it's you. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And there were some fantastic people at Nine Spokes. The culture was actually pretty good, but it was shifting at that point. And I think that was part of it. Like it wasn't right for me anymore. And I think a lot of people could see that. I think it was a bit of a surprise when I left, but it was mainly because I was so stuck in from the very beginning. And you're 100% right. Like it's the right person at the right time. If you get either one of those two wrong, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
The right person at the wrong time is a failure, even though you can hire the best XYZ role or capability of a person, but if they're not there at the right time of that, then, so I made a few of those. I think we all have, but I made a few of those mistakes along the way, both on the Nine Spokes side, but also on the Aider side as well. Just thinking you're going to be here and kind of looking at that going, let's go and get someone to do that. And then you just don't quite get there. So you've got someone in and you're not there yet. So the optimism of a founder sometimes is a bit of a curse. Eh?
Yeah, exactly. We need a bit of realism to dose in there as well.
Yeah.
But then if you're too realistic, you'd never do it.
Totally. Yeah.
One of the things that has been a consistent thread through the guests that I've had on the show is nearly all of them have said, if I knew how hard it was going to be, I probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
But that's the benefit of hindsight, right? So
100%.
So you chatted to your co-founders.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, there you go.
Chatted to your co-founders and you said, guys, this is not for me anymore. I'm going to head out the door. I'm guessing that you kind of had the shareholders agreement such in place that you were able to extricate yourself pretty easily. Was there any consequences of you leaving?
No. It was there's some formalities we had to take care of, and it was relatively clean. So it was quite quick and easy.
Yeah. And you hooked up with Pete Weaver as a co-founder. Obviously, I know Pete well. So had you guys known each other before that? Had you knew about this?
No. So switching to Aider, no, not at all. I hadn't met Pete. I had the idea. I had the Aider idea. I had it mocked up and designed. I already built a prototype to test the concept that you could actually, using a mobile app, you could text a question or ask a question through voice and then detect the intent and then go and get the answer from the data. So I've built that up just with a couple of dev friends and myself hacking it together to go like, this is never going to be a live product, but we can prove that the technology is capable of doing this with some investment.
Right.
So I've done that. I mocked it up. I got some brand work done. I got the name registered and the URL, Aider.AI. I think we locked that in already back in 2017. And then I was like, this might be quite a big business. It might be hard to build. Do I have the energy to do it on my own, or will I need to, go and get a co-founder? And so I started to ask around, and I kind of interviewed a bunch of people. And it was a friend of mine, Candace, who introduced me to Pete. And I had this list of, this is the kind of person I'm looking for. They need to be able to do this and this and this, but not that and that and that.
Yeah.
And just to make sure there was a good fit with us. Interestingly, again, it wasn't technical co-founder. That was my preference, was looking for a technical co-founder or someone that could do, the finance and the other side of it, which is where Pete's strength came from. And so I met with Pete. We kind of we workshopped a few things. We hung out a few times. We went for a few beers just to kind of do the dating game and make sure it's all okay. And
it's really important.
Yeah. And then we decided it was the right thing to do. And so kind of brought him on as co-founder in the early days.
Yeah, great.
And then that was the beginning of the journey.
Did you do the initial funding yourself, or so I know that you've raised money. At what stage did you decide to raise money?
So we did a little bit of money in ourselves initially, and started just getting, again, a rough prototype built out of that. And then maybe, I don't know if this is the right path or not, but it was definitely our path. It was kind of, this was mainly in New Zealand. We raised capital from the early stages from some angel groups and early stage investors. But we did, because our concern was having at that time seen so many New Zealand tech companies that had, the founders had almost no equity left, because so the early investors, again, back then, I think it's way better now, but back then, the angel groups would take so much of the business, and so valuations were so low. So I was like a little bit nervous about going down that path, knowing that this would probably be a capital intensive business and we had to keep raising for a while to get it out. There was no playbook for this business. It was early AI, No one knew about it. We didn't know what we didn't know. Like this could be quite a long journey. So we're going to figure it out. It's kind of, I talk about like, there's no such thing as first mover advantage. We'll come back to that in a second, but we were doing that kind of thing. So what I did to raise was we went to, there were a couple of really fantastic supporters who've supported us the whole journey. People like Angels in Marlborough, the AIM group, fantastic group there. And I said to them, hey, I need some cash. I probably need more than what I'm going to ask for now. So I'm not asking you for your first X number, 100,000, or your last. I'm asking for your first, and then I'm going to come back. But what I want to do is get enough to kind of build a working prototype, and then I'll come back and show you it's working, and then I'll ask you for a little bit more.
Smart.
And then we'll go back and ask for a little bit more, and each time the valuation will go up a little bit more. And so we did that journey, and they were great. They kind of supported us on the kind of 2 or 3 steps of, here's a check, come back and show us it's working. Here's another check, a slightly higher val. Here's another check. And we did that. That's a couple of steps, early days.
Can I just check in on what those kind of approximate valuation numbers, is that right to talk about that at that stage, and then what the steps were?
I can't remember, but they were low. I say low. They were low. Certainly, if you compare yourself to a US startup, no one would even dare do that. We'll get back to that one again later as well. But I think there were like 3. I think I raised on 3 mil for the first time.
My recollection of our early conversations is you'd raised on 3. So
yeah. And then I went. I think it was 3, 6, 9 kind of steps up like that. And then we started to go, a little bit from there. But that was really where we were playing in the early stage. And we just, the kind of, it was just hit a milestone, go back, hit a milestone, and just being really, really open with, we're probably going to need more. The Aider story, maybe, should we talk about what Aider was back then, what it was meant to be? So again, it was that pain point of the small businesses not really understanding their data and just really trying to, find a way to remove the pain and the friction between a business owner and what's going on in their business. Yeah. So we built this, and it was a mobile app first. You could download the Aider mobile app. It would integrate into your Xero or your QuickBooks or your point of sale or your payroll or your social media, and you could ask Aider questions. Okay. How much money have I got in the bank? Who owes me money? Who's working tomorrow? What's my top selling product? We'll understand the intent behind that, and we're going to get the information from the different data sets that we'd connected up to it.
Sounds like a really easy thing to describe, but I'm imagining a really hard problem to solve as Aider.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of why we're like, the problem is really hard to solve, and the technology wasn't there yet compared to where it is today. There are some use cases today, even today, where the tech that we built is better. Where it's so if you compare what we built then compared to generative AI today, it's very verbose. It throws 1,000 words at you. But actually, what a lot of people want is, what's my top selling product? If you run a cafe, it's like, I actually want to. It's a flat white, or who owes me money? Well, Josh owes you money and it's $10,000. It's like, okay, cool. That's what I need. Yes. I don't need 15 paragraphs. Yeah. But it did feel a little bit robotic compared to how Gen AI feels today. Like it's the fluff words around it are much better.
Right.
But we had to build that ourselves. We had to build our own NLP platform, natural language understanding platform. What is the intent behind that question? And it got really difficult when you dug into it, because let's say you run a gym and you say, how many sessions have I got today?
Right.
So are you talking about like gym sessions, like Pilates or training sessions booked in your booking system? Or are you talking about website sessions that are on your website?
Right.
These words get really down into a niche, into every vertical.
That's the whole context problem.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so we then found that we were kind of focusing more and more on a couple of verticals to start off with, just to get them right. So we decided, a lot of research, how many are there out there? And there's a lot of retail hospitality business. Let's go there first. So we started there. And this is all the learning curve of the early days of Aider. And it was that problem of trying to help these small businesses make better sense of what was going on in their business. the bigger vision was that we would then bring in these accountants, and then the accountants were able to go and see all of that and then help them on their advisory journey. So the advisory idea was already there in the background, but the product we'd built was directly for small businesses.
Okay. And was the sales channel directly to small businesses themselves, or did you
Correct.
have okay.
The idea later on was, it's really hard. And the idea later on was, again, when once those accountants are in, then they start to become the channel and they can introduce it to their clients and then share the data and so on. And it's a great solution for accountants to be offering their small business clients.
Yes. Did you know that from the outset that the right way ultimately down the path for you would be through the accountants?
Yeah.
This is really interesting because Xero's model we all now know is through accountants to users. Yeah. But originally they didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so you probably know the story as well as I do, but they started with direct to market, and then they endeavored to find a channel partner. One of their routes to market was Vodafone, which you've spent time working at, right?
Yeah.
They thought the Vodafone might help them get to those customers. There was another channel partner they used. And I think the accountants was actually their last swipe before they ran out of that particular tranche of money. And so it's quite prescient of you to realize that actually we need to be with these folk, but also they've got a lot of noise around them. The accountants have a lot of noise around them. So we're going to have to wait to get something which is going to work before we can ask them to come on board in the journey, I'm presuming.
Yeah. I mean, we'd done a lot of work with Xero by that point in time, A, because of my Nine Spokes days before that, but then B, because we'd already built an integration into Xero. So we knew a lot of that story. And so we could see it and evaluate and see the journey they'd been on and kind of go, yeah, that is an interesting market. But also, as we released this app for small businesses, accountants started to approach us from day one and go, that's really interesting. I'd love my client to have that. We just hadn't built the product yet where there was the accountant's interface and how they could roll it out. We would build, in the first year or two, it was really just a small business story.
Right.
And what was hard, like you talk about the sales channel, it's hard. The channel was hard selling directly to small businesses, but also, again, being early in AI, that was hard because no one knew what AI was. No one cared. No one was looking for it.
Maybe didn't trust it.
No one. Yeah. So if you walked over and said, hey, do you want this tool to help you run your business better? It's built on AI. It's going to help you. And they were like, what? Why would I need that? I don't understand what that is. No one had Googled it. Like, do I need, what AI can I use? That was never a thing. So when we showed them...
You've got a great story for you, I'll interrupt, which is that I did a series of talks when I'd started Ambit.
Yeah.
And I opened the talk with a true story, which is that I was chatting to Mum one day and I'd moved around, a variety of different jobs and, well, not jobs, but businesses. And Mum asked me one day, she says, what is it you're up to in business these days, darling? I said, Mum, I've started an AI company. And she ponders and she looks at me deeply and she goes, but darling, you know nothing of artificial insemination. True story, right? But in 2017, 2018, nobody knew what this thing was. And so here you are going, hey, I've got this AI solution to all the problems of the world. They're like, you've got a what?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I do know a little bit about artificial insemination.
That's another story.
Yeah, that is. It's all legit, though. I was on the board of a really interesting New Zealand company, the advisory board, technology advisory board for LIC.
Okay.
Livestock Improvement Corporation. So they are super smart, bunch of labs, all about agriculture and the dairy industry in New Zealand. So there it is. It's an actual story. Mm-hmm. But yeah, AI. Thanks for that. Artificial intelligence. I just remember going to customers or prospects and walking into their cafe or their retail or their restaurant and saying, do you want an AI tool? Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then we would show them the app and you'd literally see them go, I had no idea that technology could do this.
Wow.
No idea. And that was easy. Like once you showed them, they were in. It's quite easy for them to download the app and connect it up and start to use it. But that's a really hard channel to
grind, man. Grind, get all the sales meetings and get the cafe owner in there at the right time and then take them through the process. And I'm imagining you're not talking thousands of dollars per month per site. You're talking, you're $100 a month, maybe maximum, right?
Yeah, really less than that.
So less than that. Yeah. Okay. So CAC is high. Massively high. So CAC payback. Sorry, that's customer acquisition cost payback. That's the time it takes you to recover through revenue. The cost of acquiring the business. It's a really critical SaaS metric. There's not all SaaS people watching this. So
yeah, totally. And Yeah, so it was an interesting journey. It was fun times. We were breaking new ground. We were learning a lot. You got to have, again, the right people at the right time for that part of the business. And then there was a very scary thing happened. As our numbers were picking up and we were growing and things were starting to look really encouraging, and we knew that there was something here. We just needed to get some capital behind it. I started to do a capital raise, spoke to a few early stage investors in New Zealand and Australia, and it started to kind of reach out and talk to the US because we had customers in the US as well. So we looked at that, got some really interesting conversations on the way, got a term sheet, and all that was left was signatures on the term sheet when COVID hit.
Wow, so about 2020 we're talking.
Yeah.
And so this would have been, was this your Series A? Were you kind of
Yeah, it was around that.
5,
Something like that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and it was a strategic investor. And the term sheet was done, like we'd been negotiating them. We were already down to the wire. Like it was starting to get a little bit scary on runway.
Yeah.
But the numbers were looking good. Numbers were picking up, and this investor was super interested, and we got a term sheet. And if you remember, when early days of COVID, the first verticals that were hit were retail and hospitality,
massively,
and our numbers dropped through the floor. And this strategic investor were like, "We don't know what's going on with this strange COVID thing. Your numbers are tanking, and we don't know what we're going to do with COVID, so we pull in the term sheet." And we had very little left. Like the year of 2020 for me was a blur, and it was a really, really horrible year. Like, just I remember thinking, I think that was about March when that happened, and we were, how do we get April's payroll? How do we get May's payroll? How do we get June's? How do we get July's?
Yeah.
How do we get all, like it was month by month, just trying to find that, going to shareholders and going to everyone saying, what do we do? You put your house on the line, you loan the business money, you borrow from where, we did everything that you could. The government rolled out that program. Yeah, and that saved us as well. It gave us a little bit of extra breathing room for a couple of months, but it was a absolute, like from March to October, November was a blur.
Hey, legend. Thanks for your ears. I really appreciate you listening to the show. Everything improves through feedback. I'd be really grateful if you could head to my website, joshcomrie.com, just click on the podcast link and fill out a 2-minute survey, which will give me the insights around the things that you're enjoying about the show and where you would like us to go more into the future. It'll take less than 2 minutes. I'd be really grateful. And you'll also receive some free resources should you share your email address with us. Thanks so much and enjoy the rest of the show. Was it your toughest year in business, do you think?
I think so. I think that was probably, that was hard. Yeah.
So I've long believed that it's the really difficult experiences in life that make us into the person that we are. I describe it like the process of forging, steel. When you make steel and you make it tougher by putting it into a fire and then banging the shit out of it with a hammer and then sticking it in some water and then repeating that process over and over again. And so as a human being, that can feel obviously quite brutal, not literally getting that done to you because you die, but the metaphorical version of it. And so what were the things that you did to get through that, like both physically and like mentally?
Yeah. I mean, I remember that like some of the hardest stuff was quite brutal because the team, just the Aider team were like, we have your back, Brendan. We have faith. We want to stay here. Everyone took voluntary pay cuts. The energy in the business actually went up. Everyone was like, we'll find a way. So I had this, I can't see where the money's coming from for the next payroll, but everyone's staying here because they want to and they believe I'm going to make it happen. And I'm like, that's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, it's a weight.
It was tough. I was just trying everything everywhere. And we knew we were onto something. We just didn't know where the next investment was going to come to keep us alive. Yeah. And so there's this, again, the optimism of a founder. Like, I just believed something would happen somewhere.
Yeah.
We actually had 2 acquisition attempts during that phase.
Oh, obviously you didn't go out seeking those things. People came to you.
Yeah. I think people were just shopping for opportunities around then. One was a UK exit a software company that liked what we were doing, and a couple of others, another software company, and they were like, we've really liked what you're doing. Can we meet? And we ended up having quite a few discussions with them.
Did you get to offer letter stage?
We got to high-level term sheets, but we didn't get to the next layer.
What was the problem? What got in the way?
Again, I think there was a lot of nervousness around COVID around the world. One of them was, I think they were just kicking the tires anyway, which is a big distraction, looking for a deal.
Yeah.
The other one was we just weren't quite product-wise where they needed us to be. So they loved the idea, loved the concept, but it wasn't quite there yet.
So, all this is going on. So your revenue's been tanking. Your product, you think you found product market fit, but that particular market has just been decimated.
Yeah.
You're at that point, and people, I think, outside of technology don't understand the economics and the model of tech businesses, which is that you are commercially unviable for the longest of times until you are. You essentially trade illiquid because your expenses exceed your revenue every year until you cracked it.
Yeah.
And if you're Amazon, then you try and hide your tax issues by staying cash flow negative for the longest of times, right?
Yeah.
And basically until about 4 or 5 years ago, they started paying some tiny modicum of tax. And so you're trading as this business that doesn't make any sense on paper. And so, and most of us got through COVID through drinking, but of course you've got the responsibility of a company and a young family to kind of deal with, so you probably couldn't do that every day. So,
and that for me personally, the hardest part was the family part, because I was working from home. I kind of locked myself in a room, out there desperately talking to people, trying to raise capital, trying to talk to people, trying to keep the team on, just like, guys, keep going, keep building. We have to keep building. But trying to raise capital and trying to find these things under massive stress. And then there was this no break, no buffer anymore because of the work from home thing, between stepping out of my last call of the day, trying to keep the business alive, feeding all that pressure, open the door, and I got 2 young kids that are like, hey, Dad, let's go and do this, let's go and do that. There was not 1 second break. And to switch your mind out of that mode into family mode, that to me was really, really hard. I struggled with that. You want to be there for the kids. You want to go and play. You want to go and, the COVID lockdown time was like, the weather was amazing. I want to be out there all the time and do all that kind of stuff. And I like to exercise, and that's what kept me alive through it, I think, was just the keeping yourself physically healthy. I've focused a lot on that, and means you can cope more mentally and take a little bit more pressure. But I did struggle with felt like I had to be a little bit, I don't know, what's the word, bipolar. That's not the right word, but you know what I mean? Like, I had one personality behind that door and then switch personality 1 second later to the kids, and just be present and be the dad.
Yeah.
That was the hard part.
They talk about compartmentalizing your life.
That's
which means that you're kind of putting things into boxes. But I kind of subscribe to the Buddhist way of thinking, and a lot of what they talk about is an integrated life, and you are but one person. And so compartmentalizing is not living a true life. And so it's really hard to do that, right?
Yeah.
Unless you have, actually, I've got a couple of friends that are on the spectrum, Asperger's, kind of related individuals. In fact, a couple of them have been on the show. And they have an incredible ability to do that, because this is the thing that I am doing right now. And I am unbelievably focused on doing this thing right now. And then I walk away from this thing, and then I'm playing with my kids. And that's just how life goes.
And it is hard to switch.
Yeah, but for most others that don't have that, I think it's a bit of a gift to have that.
Yeah.
Then, really, really difficult to contact switch.
Yeah.
So did you get any help? Was that, kind of that you'd seek any other founders who are going through the same thing? Did you get any therapy? I'm asking this because yesterday I had a deep dive into founder mental health with Johnny Merkin. And so it was fascinating as a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's not always around, right? And neither do we always have the propensity to go and look for that thing.
Yeah. No is the short answer. And I mean, there were probably just, it wasn't proactive. You ended up having conversations and phone calls with people. There were some shareholders and investors that were trying to be helpful and were like sending stuff out and going, hey, this is COVID. COVID's happened. It's like, we don't know what's going on. Here's a way to look after yourself. Right. Hope for the best, plan for the worst, all that kind of advice.
Yeah.
And that was helpful to see. There were people reaching out. And again, some of the early stage investors were checked in proactively. I'd get a phone call every now and then saying, how you doing? So that was how I wasn't very good at going out and asking for it. But there were people checking in. So that was nice.
Is that, would you put that down to a cultural thing? You're African, South African by birth.
Yeah.
And, probably like New Zealand to a reasonable extent. That's the whole, stiff upper lip and, just get on with it kind of thing. Is it?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. I think there's just that kind of built in as where like, just deal with it.
Yeah.
Sort it out and, don't complain.
Yeah.
And just keep going.
And those well-meaning intentions from people sending you a sheet on how to deal with stress feels like you're the man in the middle of a house fire and someone gives you a cup of water.
Yeah.
Well, that's not really going to be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get the intention, but you're not going to fix the problem for me here.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then on top of all that, so you've got all these issues going on, you get people sniffing around to buy the assets of the company. They offer to kind of a lifeline, essentially, which then in and of itself becomes a massive distraction.
Massive distraction, but you have to chase it down because it could be the way
for a liquid
thing. Yeah. So it was a fascinating time. And
fascinating, I love that. That's intellectualizing it now. It was the hardest year of your life and nearly killed you.
Yeah. Yeah. But what was interesting was before COVID hit, we were already having conversations with banks again. The banks liked the idea of this mobile app, and they were like, "How do we get that out to our clients?" So it was one of the other channels that we were exploring, and so one of the local banks reached out and said, "Hey, are you available? Like you, Brendan, you as Aider, what's going on? We're quite interested in your product. Don't know where it fits on our roadmap yet, but we're interested in it." And then there was a conversation about, hey, maybe we should even buy you. And I was like, what? And that was interesting for one of the local banks. And
they're not in the business of buying software companies
in
New Zealand typically. So
I think they just liked the team and what we were building, and they kind of wanted to try and innovate a little bit more. It was a very high level conversation, but that led to another conversation with one of the other banks that was already talking to us. And they said, well, we do have an investment arm.
Yeah.
Let's do this thing. And they were amazing. They literally,
can I ask who?
That was ANZ back in the day, out of the Australian business. So they were at the time called ANZI. They're now rebranded to 1835i.
Okay.
And we were one of their first very early investments.
And as I understand with those things, they tend to be a few $100,000 checks with very light due diligence and not a lot of kind of barbs or terms attached to it. Is that right?
Yeah. So this one was a little bit more than that. They gave us a couple of $1 million.
A couple of $1 million bucks?
Yep.
Yeah, hells yeah.
And they were fast. Their due diligence was pretty thorough.
Yes.
And they put a team on people and they said, we're going to start it on Tuesday. This was on Friday. I remember going to watch, actually the phone call was on the Friday of the initial phone call of, should we do this? The CEO at the time, Shane Elliott, CEO of ANZ Australia or ANZ Group, said, I like it. I think we should look at it. I'll get someone to reach out. And he said, they'll call you tomorrow. And I thought, this is a bank. Today's Friday. I'm not going to call me on a Saturday.
Yeah.
I was watching my daughter play netball in the rain on a Saturday, and my phone rang, and there's an Australian number that I didn't recognize. So I took the call anyway. And it was them. They're going, we've been told we should look at you, tell us what you do. And we had a quick chat. The following Tuesday, a squad of people turned up and started their due diligence.
How long did it take?
The following week, we had a term sheet.
A week later?
A week later.
That's remarkable.
And a week later, we had the cash.
Yeah. Wow. 2 weeks.
So they moved really fast. They were amazing.
By then, you'd been kind of reduced salaries for the staff. Did you take more debt on your home? Did you do that as well?
Yeah, we did.
Loaded up more mortgage.
Money in and borrowed money. And
investors came to the party. So you're literally bleeding cash for this thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
How did that feel?
That moment when they said, yes, we're in, and the check came through, how did it feel?
Well, it was... I thought there was going to be celebration. I thought I would celebrate. I really didn't. There was just relief.
Yeah.
It was just like, holy, I'm glad that's over. I just need to go somewhere and lick my wounds for a couple of days and just try and figure out what to do,
Yeah, wow. Did it feel like because the exit event, which is not this one, and we're going to come to that, is that from the outside, people think that it's this big celebratory Yahoo, go and get a private jet or a yacht or whatever your propensity for spending money is. And for a lot of people, they get to that stage and they're just exhausted, just absolutely worn out from the DD typically is what tends to happen.
Yeah.
And getting the business to that stage as well. There's this narrative around in New Zealand criticising New Zealand-based founders for building a business and then selling it for 50, 100, whatever the number is, $1 million to an international concern. And they're like, they're taking that asset overseas. And I'm like, screw you guys. Like, who are you to sit there in your corporate gig and hassle someone who spent 10 to 15 to 20 years of their life? They've sacrificed so many things to get that business to where it is to be worth that much money. And if they take a good number for that thing, then who are you to criticize them for that? And so your version of that was just another kind of take on it, that you were really just like, I'm just so ruined that this is, the lifeline's there, and I'm just, all I can do is feel like a little bit of relief, but no celebration whatsoever.
Yeah. I didn't know, there was no, I think it was kind of weeks later, we actually did a celebration. We actually forced ourselves to go and do something. And, that transaction when they invested, facilitated quite a big change, because at the time, that's where Pete was no longer active in the business, and we could create a small secondary and pay out some other smaller shareholders and so on. So we cleaned the books. We got a whole lot of things sorted out, and then the plan was work with the bank, like get this mobile app, get it integrated, get it into the bank, and roll it out. And that was. That took us a couple of years of working with the bank and trying to figure out their roadmap and their priorities and things like that. And it was a couple of years into that journey where we've still got this advisory thing for accountants parked out the back here, which we can't do anything with because the bank doesn't want to do anything with it.
So there was conditions of taking the money from the bank, of course, that you kind of then became, were you beholden to them in terms
Not really.
of product map?
Not really. It was relatively loose on those. We didn't have any of those barbs or hooks to it. The only thing that they asked for was something, I can't remember, it was first right of refusal on a certain bank. Like they didn't even block us from selling to other banks. It was just that you can't go and sell something to them without talking to us first, which is fair enough. They've just given us a lot of money. So it was a really good thing. They were extremely reasonable, extremely supportive. So that's where I'm going with this is that COVID was tough. And then there was a couple of years of probably a little bit of time, it wasted a lot of time because you're moving at bank speed at that point. It's like, this is not going to go anywhere. And where I'm going with this is actually Aider, even Aider is one brand. And we registered the name once back in 2017, 2018, and we built a team. We then did a major pivot after that. And that was where we came into the accountants and the advisory space. And that was 2022. And it was like, okay, guys, this thing is never going to go live in the bank. We're going to sit here waiting until we run out of cash. We have to pivot now. And I don't know what it was like for you, but when you start a business, you kind of mentally prepare yourself that you're going to go through this journey and it's going to be tough and nothing's going to be easy. And for Aider, I kind of got 2 for the price of 1 on that one. I wasn't quite mentally prepared for 2, but we literally pivoted everything from the team to the technology, to the product, to the target market, to the go-to-market, to the architecture behind it. But the big difference was, in 22 was when suddenly people woke up that there is this thing called AI.
Yeah, because it was November 22 that ChatGPT was released.
Yeah.
And so you were building at the start of 22 for this thing, or was it like the middle of the year? When did you release the product out to the market?
So we released it. I think we were the first to have generative AI built into our product in the accounting industry, possibly globally, because we already had it in the product at the end of 2022.
Okay, well.
It wasn't great, but it did a good job, like a fair enough job for what we needed to do for a particular use case we had it in the product. We just didn't. We were still in closed beta. We had some small paying customers. It was more like, come and sign up and tell us what you like and tell us what you don't, kind of.
Yeah.
And it was in 23, halfway through 23, when we went back into the commercial launch for the first time of the new platform.
Yeah, okay.
So,
and so by then, most of the world had heard of generative AI and had probably started to experiment with it. What was the initial kind of growth of that new version of the product like in mid-23?
Yeah, so that was really good. So then, by then, I think they'd released 3.5T OpenAI, and so the quality jump from the Model 2, the Model 3 to 3.5T was huge.
Yeah,
and so suddenly the product started to do things that it was actually meant to do, and still in the accounting industry, it was probably not. AI wasn't quite well understood at that point, or like there's still a bit of fear of like, what is it going to do to us? And
still is now.
Yeah. But there were no proper use cases. So it was quite interesting for us to be able to stand and show people at like a Xerocon event or other, this is what it can do. And so the adoption started to get really high. People loved the vision. They loved where we were going. The product was still brand new at that stage. And so we've had customers that are with us today that had signed up back in those early days and have supported us and continually provided feedback on that. But we've been, certainly in the accounting industry, a very early adopter and driver of AI. That led to a lot of, thought leadership and summits and things that we were working on. So I kind of skip forward a little bit just to tell that story. On this year, I ran an AI and accounting summit, one in New Zealand and one in Australia. We've got all these sponsors, Xero and Intuit and a bunch of others to sponsor it, and Carbon was one of those sponsors, and we did them, and the accountants sign up just to try and figure out what's going on with AI, how's it going to impact, what do I use it for, how does it work? So that went really well in New Zealand and Australia. And then in July this year, we did 4 cities in the US, LA, Denver, Chicago, and Atlanta.
Okay. And
Xero co-sponsored them and Carbon co-sponsored them. And what happened was we got to know Carbon, we got to know the industry, became these thought leaders. People really liked the idea of Aider, the customers. But you're on tour with some other big brands out there.
Yes. And tell us about Carbon's business. Carbon with a K.
Carbon with a K. So Carbon is focused on accountants. They're a practice management software.
Okay.
So if you think of there's some horizontal or generic practice or workflow management like ClickUp and some of those others. Carbon's purpose-built for accountants.
Yeah, got it.
And so they deeply understand the industry, and they deeply understand how to automate a lot of those things. And they're a business that has been growing like absolute crazy. Got a handful of people in New Zealand, a handful of people in Australia, but the majority of the business is in North America, in the US. And we were this year, 2025, we went into soft launch into North America. Still didn't have boots on the ground, still don't have people there, but we were starting to push into the product in the market there and just learn and figure out what works and what doesn't and what tweaks we need to make.
Yeah.
And so we were out there doing these AI summits, partly as a bit of a brand awareness exercise and just being thought leaders. And so we got all these sponsors, and Carbon was one of those sponsors.
Yeah, great.
So you end up on tour with them, getting to meet the CEO, getting to meet some of the co-founders of the business and some of the rest of the team.
Yes.
And we just really realized there was a lot of amazing synergies between what we had built, even though we're still early on, and where they're going and what they've built. And there was we filled a gap. They have a very small blind spot because they're doing really well, but they have an opportunity in there. Let's probably put it that way: an opportunity in their product suite where someone like us could really fill a big opportunity. And for us, there's a lot of workflow elements that we hadn't built that we wanted to build, and they have all of that stuff.
Great synergies.
Amazing synergies. And so that was not the intention. This was just, we were building AI and we were trying to get our brand out. We were going out and doing lots of these AI summits, thought leadership space, got a couple of really good brands along with us, and started, those relationships came along with that kind of effort.
Had you thought, and I'll get to how the acquisition conversation started in a second, but had you thought that it was perhaps too soon for you to consider selling the company this year? Yeah.
I had thought I didn't think it would be now. I really didn't. Sometimes you kind of just, you make a call and you go, the opportunity is good enough. This is a good outcome for AIDA, for AIDA's people, the team.
Yeah, investors.
And for the shareholders and investors. It's a good outcome. And so we could raise and go again and keep going, or you kind of look at the market, you look at the things that are happening and you go, this is actually a good opportunity. This is the best outcome for everyone. And that's ended up being the truth, and so that was quite with all of the things going on in the business, with all of the, I'd been started capital raising again. And there was a bunch of other things going on, and we looked at all the different parts when this conversation came up. And it was organic. It was not deliberate, and it was an opportunity for both of us, and we decided to take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How quickly? Because you spoke to them about fundraising, about investing, because they have a venture arm as well, I believe. Is that right?
They don't have a venture arm.
Right.
No. And that's why it was quite an interesting conversation. So they, I was raising capital, and their founders have done this before. They know a lot of amazing VCs, and especially VCs that like tech in the accounting space. And because we'd started to build these relationships, so we're like, let's go and have, I can introduce you to a couple of VCs. I said to them, can you do that? Because I'm raising. And so the conversation moved from, oh, you're raising capital, that's interesting. We as Carbon don't invest, so we can't help you, but I can introduce you to some investors.
Yeah, sure.
But maybe we should have another conversation.
Yeah. And
so we started to entertain the idea, and that led to, should we do something more? Should we do something more? And then we looked at it and we went, actually, you know what? This is really good.
How fast was it between the should we do something more to getting a term sheet?
It was quick. And again, there's a little bit of serendipity here. A few things came together at the same time. One was we actually had an integration built into their platform.
Right.
So we have customers on both sides of the fence, and Carbon customers that use AIDA, and we started to get some really good feedback out of that combination. So there was validation going into both businesses.
Yes.
Secondly, the AI wave in North America is huge.
Yeah, it's a tsunami, right?
Yeah. And so there was like, okay, we need to up our game in the AI space. And the other really interesting bit of serendipity was that there's there are two VCs that are on their board, and both of those VCs were VCs that I had met in our early stages of capital raising.
Got it.
So we were live in the US, soft launch, didn't have boots on the ground, as I said. But I'd started to reach out to US VCs and met with a couple that really liked the industry. And at that time, there was no Carbon conversation.
Yes.
But I knew these two VCs. They both liked us. The feedback to us was, really like what you're building. Makes sense for the industry, makes sense for the market. Come back to us when you got a little bit more traction in the US, so we know it's not just a New Zealand and Australia thing, that's also a US thing.
Yeah.
I didn't know it when I was having those conversations with them, but those two are actually on the Carbon board. So when Mary, the CEO, took the deal to the Carbon board and said, hey, what do you think? We were familiar to the VCs on the board. And so they knew, because they're experts in the SaaS industry, in the vertical anyway, that this is the direction it's heading in.
Yes.
But also they would have had notes that we know these guys. AIDA's not never unheard of before. So
yeah.
So there was a lot of serendipity in those kind of things when we say serendipity, it's that same theme that I think I was referring to earlier, for me anyways, building lots of relationships and laying the foundations of getting to know people and putting the hard work in. People describe a lot of, that was really lucky that they were on the board and that you'd met with them. They're really lucky that those conversations started. They were really lucky that this happened in this timing, and you're lucky that you built an integration. It's like, I didn't know that I didn't build the integration for an exit. I didn't meet those investors because I knew they were on their board. None of that stuff was manufactured. But because we'd done all of those things, it just made it all come together much quicker and easier.
Yeah. Seneca, one of the great Stoics, said that luck is when preparedness and opportunity meet.
Yeah.
And so as a startup founder, we spend a lot of our lives hustling, and we have a strategy that directs our hustle, and we kind of keep on working our way towards these things. And so I think that the learning here, and this is what I would take away from it, I'm curious as to what you'd take away from it, is that what you did is that you had aligned yourself with a powerful and growth-oriented partner in Carbon. So they were one of a few partners that you'd established. You did the smart thing through building an integration with that business. And I know that this is a strategy. It may not have been yours. It doesn't sound like it was intentional, but you represented a gap in their product suite. And so if people do want to reverse engineer this, a smart way to go about doing it is to find a powerful partner that's building a thing. And just because they're really great at building, 1, 2, 3 of 4 necessary building blocks in industry, it doesn't mean they'll be building a fourth. Because as a small business, you're often nearly always more nimble. You're more efficient in your use of capital and engineering resource to build something. It can cost 75% less to build something in a small, nimble company than it can in a very big, disorganized machine. And so if you could build for that thing, which is what you essentially did, and then the timing, all those things kind of come together.
Yeah.
And so sure, from the outside, people would say it's serendipitous, but I'm like, well, no, hey, we now know the story of what you had to do to get there.
Yeah.
And so you deserve that bloody good outcome. That's what I'd make it mean.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's absolutely right. Like it wasn't like it was deliberate and you manufacture that outcome. It was, but it is an opportunity, and you spot it, and you kind of assessed the various options, and then you ended up having a good conversation and worked out well. And they were, the process was good. Like this
was it quick as well, right?
It was relatively quick. We started in July. Yep. The first conversation around it was around then. We completed
in October, I think.
End of September.
End of September.
Yeah. So it was relatively quick, and they were extremely good to work with. Little complicated because we had New Zealand product and revenue, and we had US, and so there were US lawyers and New Zealand lawyers, right. And because of the structure of the deal and and shares and things like that, it ended up having 4 legal firms involved.
Right.
So that's always fun.
Yeah, they love getting involved in these things. Yeah. So I know that we can't talk about the terms of the deal. We had that conversation before coming on the show. But for you, what does it mean now in terms of your involvement with Carbon from here?
Yeah. So that's personally very exciting. In that they want me to stay on and continue to run Aider and chase down the vision that we had anyway.
Wonderful.
Which is fantastic. So it's a standalone brand, standalone company. People accountants can still sign up to Aider and use it if they're non-Carbon customers. But if you're Carbon customers, you get Aider plus a bunch of other things.
Right. Great.
And so it's a fantastic when there's a 1 + 1 = 3 if you're a Carbon customer. And so that's my role now as kind of the general manager of Aider within the group.
Yes.
And we get to keep all of our team, give them a bit of a pay rise, and even increase the team. We've got money in the bank to do that kind of stuff now. We've got investment, and Carbon are adding additional resources to the business to kind of help it grow faster and so on, which is great.
Yeah.
So they've been fantastic to work with. I have an earnout, and that's for another, for the next period, let's call it that, without putting any specifics on. But there's a number that I've got to chase down, I've got to make happen. There was this deal. It felt like the right thing to do with Carbon, but also from the team. I care very much about the team and the people and the culture that we've built, and they've got a fantastic culture. And we looked at that compared to some of the other conversations we've had around with other businesses where the culture fit was so different. I couldn't hand on my heart say to the team, guys, this is a great opportunity for you, but with Carbon I can.
Yeah.
And so that is a really important thing, is the people that have been on this journey with you, to look after them. And so for me, I needed to know that was going to be true, and it is.
Yeah. You were having fundraising conversations in the States with VCs, and before that, had you successfully raised out of the States?
We had raised some money from the US, a couple of high net worths, and there is a couple of SPVs, special purpose vehicles, from a New Zealand fund, so QuidNet, who got money from US.
Yes.
into an SPV here and then invested into AIDA.
Okay. Yeah, good.
Yeah, so there were a couple of we had some US folk on our cap table.
Yeah, got it. What do you see as being the key differences between raising money out of New Zealand, Australia, and the States?
So if I just kind of I'll lump New Zealand and Australia into one just unfairly, but I'll just do that for a second, just because for me the big difference is between New Zealand and Australia and the US.
Sure.
In the US, valuations are higher, check sizes are bigger, the burn is bigger. It's a lot more kind of raise more, go harder, go fast. It is not. It's not about kind of grow at all costs anymore, which is quite good. It's like they do want a path to profitability, but they are still way more gung-ho. Like I ended up having to have two decks, a deck that you share with New Zealand and Australian investors that is a little bit more conservative. The valuation is lower. The check size you're asking for is lower. Because I remember the first couple of conversations I had with the US, I used that same deck that I'd written for the local investors, and I went over to the US, and they were like,
laughed you out of the room.
Yeah. Once you take yourself seriously, you can come back.
Yeah.
I was like, holy, what? Whereas here I was being told, you're kidding. Like you're asking for too much and your valuation is too high. Over there, I get told, why would you even wake up out of bed in the morning and start a business with that kind of valuation?
Yeah.
So you get caught in this really weird world of that there are good investors in New Zealand and Australia, and there's good capital here.
Yeah.
But if you get caught with a foot in both camps, like we were in soft launch, like I said, we were looking to raise there. It's a growing market. We know we wanted to really accelerate in the US. So I was hopeful for a US VC and hunting them down. They want to see very different things than what I could show them, and especially around the money we were asking for.
Yeah. I'll add some color to that based on my experience, and then I'm curious as to your thoughts on this as well. So I think the delineation for me is whether you should look to New Zealand, ANZ, let's call it, or Australia, is where is the current revenue attributable to? If it's 100% New Zealand, then it's a very difficult conversation to go to the States. If you're pre-revenue, it's actually almost easier to go directly to the States, provided you can demonstrate some really, really great knowledge of the product market fit likelihood, your ability to get there.
Yeah.
Whilst being aware that you may well be a Kiwi with our Kiwi proclivities or a new Kiwi with our proclivities, competing in a market full of Americans who love hyperbole, they love hockey sticks, and they talk them up endlessly. And they love the massive dreaming that you can do in a market of 350 million people with access to, once you include LATAM, then it's almost twice the scale in all of those markets across that part of the world. And it's not a big extension to go. We can go into Latin America as well. And so if you've got most or all of your revenue here and you've got a bid in the States, then you've got a narrative that can pull you into that market, especially if you've been growing aggressively in the States over the period coming up to leading. Where it gets difficult is if you have no perspective, no visibility, and no real narrative or story around how you're going to play and win in that market, and then you'll just go into that very, very long queue of people that the inevitable Silicon Valley talk, which is, we love what you're doing, come back and talk to us when you're hitting $1 million of recurring revenue. You know, that kind of narrative, which people hear as we love what you're doing, come back, whereas it's actually just a no.
It's a nice no.
Yeah, it's a nice no. Yeah, but they don't want to close the door forever.
Yeah.
And sure, when you hit the $1 million US revenue, then do come back and talk to us. But what would you suggest to people that are thinking about the capital raising journey? You've raised from a lot of different places at different stages of the journey. Probably, in fact, one of the most that I've had on the show, because you've done the friends and family, you've done angel groups, high net worth individuals, IPO, VCs. So you've done quite a lot.
Yeah.
So how would one ascertain, in simple terms, we don't need a masterclass, but in simple terms, if someone's looking to raise money, what would be a couple of suggestions you'd make to them about how they determine the right source of that capital?
It's a very cop-out answer, but it does really depend on the business and where you're focused and what the market is that you're focused on. I can tell you what didn't work, just to start off with. But and it is that kind of getting caught with a foot in both camps and not having enough traction in the US so that the VCs see it as a New Zealand and Australian thing. They want to know that it's not just that, and that it is also a US thing.
Yeah.
So it's about picking your time. Like there's nothing wrong with raising capital, and there's some really good investors in New Zealand and Australia and getting that going first. But to your point, you need to get the milestones done before you go to the US.
Yeah.
If you go there too early, that's quite hard. But I think I think it's the industry. Well, if we kind of cut it out and look at what's in the US as available, it's just there's everything that you could possibly need from a capital perspective there.
Yeah.
It's a personal thing for you as a founder, but also for the businesses to whether you want to go down that path or not. And VC is not for everybody.
Yeah.
It's relentless, and once you've got that VC on your board, it might not be the right approach for everybody who's into capital.
Yeah, expectations are huge.
Expectations are massive. Like their numbers have to be high, and so you have to have a business for that and be ready for that, and also probably be ready to move. And I was asked 100 times,
"Will you moving?
Will you move?" Yeah, and I kind of look back and I look at the kids and go, they're in high school here, and New Zealand's great for kids. Like, am I going to shift the whole family over there? No, I'm not going to do that. So my sacrifice was travel. So I do travel to the US a lot, but a lot of US investors want you there, and for good reason. They're putting a lot of money into an unproven thing, and they want to know that they can be close and that they can help. Yeah. So I totally get it. I don't personally think you need it as much as you used to in the past, but that's what they want.
They help.
I don't think they need. I think it's possible to launch and grow a business in North America without having to live there.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
Where I think that's a bit of a hangover of pre-COVID days and pre-everything online days. Like most people, I meet people face to face in America more often than they do, because one of them lives, because one American lives on the West Coast and one on the East Coast. They never see each other.
Yeah, I
see them multiple times a year because I travel and go and see them.
Yes,
I could be doing that. I could have the same relationship they have online. So the
expectations and the tools have changed, and so the rules of the game have changed consequently.
But the narrative isn't all like they still have their playbook. They still have their LPs that they've raised on the back of these rules, and so some of them are just you have to be there.
Yeah,
but that's okay. I mean, that's just working through the numbers. What I found really hard was this post-pivot story. The pivot was the right thing to do with our product. We needed to do it. We were not going to get where we needed to get to. Like, the irony is, if I relaunched Aider today, version 1, using the technology that's available today in 2025, it would probably it'd crush. Absolutely crazy. But we kind of moved away from that. But what I had to do was explain away the pivot to everybody, and there's a couple of big questions that investors ask, and they were like, so when did you start the business? And you're like, we pivoted, like we launched a new product in this date, but they want to know the original date. So a lot of investors like a pivot because it shows that you've got resilience and you can find a way, and you're not just going to, you'll figure something out, but a lot of them don't. And then it's just explaining away a pivot. Like if we were starting from scratch, 2023, launched the product brand new, that's quite a compelling story. But when you have to then explain away what happened 2018, 2020 to get to that point, suddenly a lot of investors are like, really like what you're doing, but we'll come, like, just show me when you've got some traction.
Yeah.
So the pivot can count against you. And I couldn't bear to think about not pivoting and in other words, starting afresh, because I felt the weight of taking the early investor money. There was, even though the business was nearly dead, like the story we told, it could have been dead. And then we pivoted and started completely from scratch and brought all those shareholders along with us.
Yes.
I still think it was the right thing to do. It just was much, much harder than what it probably needed to be. So
yeah. I mean, you didn't know that at the outset.
No.
And as you say, with pivots, you work with the information that you have available at the time, and then you have the courage and the confidence just to kind of change the business and the narrative of the business of what you've been up to from till that moment in time. And so, could it have been any easier? Who's to say?
Yeah.
You are where you are.
Yeah.
So when we spoke before coming on the show, I posited that you may have been New Zealand's first AI exit, because I hadn't heard, and I did some research, and interestingly, there's a company which I don't think they're a pure AI play, but have you ever heard of Volpara Health? Volpara Health?
No.
Yeah, this was fascinating. So announced December, so May 24 is when the deal happened. It was a $300 million deal.
Wow.
And they had cancer screening, mammography technology based out of Wellington to a South Korean company.
Awesome.
So I think that it's not a pure AI play. You're a .ai, it's a .ai. So that's when you're an AI software play. So I think it's an AI enabled.
Yeah.
The next one was Robotics Plus, much smaller deal. Yeah.
And I've
heard of Robotics Plus as well. Interestingly acquired by Yamaha, but that was below $200 million. So OIO below the threshold. And so according to Traction, there are 84 AI startups in New Zealand in total. Only 18 are funded, and only 4 have secured Series A or beyond funding.
Interesting.
Yeah, really, really interesting. And the exit rate of AI companies in New Zealand is 5.9%. But I think more of those have been failures than they have been successes, because if you do the math back on those two numbers, they don't kind of add up. So I'm going to call you the first pure play AI exit in New Zealand.
Interesting.
So congratulations.
Thanks. Thank you. I had you know what? I didn't even think of that. It's not something that I kind of spend time thinking about. When you asked the question, I was like, I actually have no idea.
Well, you're fighting fires, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that. Yeah, but congrats to those guys. Those are some good stories there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just exciting to be able to kind of move on to a new phase and a new chapter. And
got a well-heeled family member who's now in the business and probably the chair of the board. And so that means that the funding concerns will be far less or different than they have been in the past.
Yeah.
Plus, they're also, they have a strong vested interest in ensuring that you succeed.
Totally.
And you're operating in the same space.
Yeah.
And, you're now a carbon company, I presume.
Correct.
And so just a great story all round. So, Brendan, I always finish these conversations with the alternate career question. So there's another universe, there's another Brendan. He might be called something different, and he has a deeply satisfying career. It's not doing the entrepreneurship thing. What is that career?
Honestly, for me, based on where I grew up and what makes me feel whole and like at one with the universe, if you want to call it that, it would be a nature conservation guy in the African bush.
Amazing.
One of the things I really wanted to do, I spent a lot of time, I grew up in South Africa, I spent a lot of time in safari in the bush. I know it well. It's where it's where my heart feels happy. And I would love to do something in that. I watch a lot of conservation videos and saving animals and releasing animals. And at one point want to become a helicopter pilot to fly over and find the sick animals so you could dart them and bring them in and fix them and get them back out again. And so that if it was my parallel universe and I could do it all over again, but it would not be in tech or entrepreneurial, it would be that.
Yeah, I love it.
So I do love that. And yeah, drumming, I actually got a gig tomorrow night. This is the fourth gig in 4 weekends. That's unusual. I don't usually play that much and normally don't have enough time, but I do. This is a bunch of friends. It's covers. We're all got, all professionals, all got day jobs. So we do it because we love it.
Yeah. What's your favorite song to play when you're on the stage of the night? You get a whole bunch, and that's a hard thing for me to ask, but I'm curious, what's your favorite song to play?
I think the fun songs as a drummer for me to play, and with the band that we end up doing really well, is their songs, Kings of Leon and the Killers, and that kind of vibe.
Yeah, good strong bass line and punchy.
Good anthem. People love singing along. Yes. That kind of stuff resonates. But we do play, when you do a covers band, you kind of sell your soul a little bit. And you play what, not necessarily what you love, you got to play what the people want. And
Yes.
and there's a bit of a difference sometimes.
Totally.
And
I DJ, and so have done it for money over time, but mainly just house parties for friends these days.
Yeah.
And the Mr. Brightside, the Thin White Duke remix of The Killers is one of my favourites to play, and I actually really enjoy playing it. But everyone gets up and sings along, and you drop the mid out, and everyone sings along with their lungs, and you're having a good time, and you kind of feel like it's yours, even though someone else made it, and you just push play on the thing. But I can totally relate at a different level of skill and type of skills.
Well, Mr. Brightside, funny enough, is usually the song we would finish on a night. Right. It's kind of the fake ending. You know, we'd say, sorry, it's game over. And then like one more song would jump on, and it's Mr. Brightside. And
I love it.
Yeah.
It sounds similarly for me. I do it towards the back end of the set.
Yeah.
Or I Feel So Close to You Right Now by Calvin Harris.
That's our second last song.
Oh, look at that.
You see DJs and bands, same thing, right?
It's so much. I love it. Brendan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah.
The deal was announced very recently, so I know there's a lot of things that you're doing post-deal kind of settling in, and I'm really grateful for you to take the time to talk to us so close to that happening. And I just wish you the best of luck from here, my man.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Really good to chat.
Pleasure.
Cheers, Josh.
Awesome. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Your ears are really important to me. If you haven't already, why not check out joshcomrie.com. There's a bunch of free resources on there, a downloadable chapter of my upcoming book, 2 commas, a diagnostic to help you understand where your business may be at in relation to your exit journey. And why not feel free to drop me an email with any feedback that you could have. Any way I and any of us can improve is through feedback. Thanks again for listening.